For those who don't know me, my name is Joy Elise. My pronouns are she, they. I am the president and executive director of Imagine Black and Imagine Black Futures. I want to speak directly to what's happening right now in Prosper, Portland, and the city proposed budget amendment. Before I share a little bit more, I want to just set some background about me so you know who I am. If you don't know about Imagine Black, we are a Black-led, Black-serving nonprofit based here in Oregon. We don't claim to represent all Black people. I'm sure that's going to be in the comments. Folks are going to say things. We don't do that. There are over 90,000 Black folks in Oregon. It is impossible for one group to represent all of us. What we do is we organize a base of progressive Oregonians. We have a Black queer feminist lens. We center Black folks who are most impacted in the state of Oregon. And we also are deeply rooted in this concept around Black radical imagination. We push to increase Black political power and to get us closer to Black liberation. We also believe in deep democracy. We believe in community members being involved in a democratic process. We believe in folks being able to speak out loud without to be unapologetic in the way that they do advocacy and to not fear retaliation. As I say this, I recognize as a Black org, we are not new to government agencies retaliating against us, to saying some really harmful anti-Black things, to try to take funding away from us, to try to silence us. So as I record this, I'm very much aware that I'm going to get some backlash. There's going to be someone saying something ridiculous. If you want to hear me talk a little bit more about that might be an offline conversation. But the things that we've been told, the death threats, the inflammatory language, it's quite ridiculous if you knew everything. But I do want to also say a little bit about me. I've been working at Imagine Black as executive director since 2017. Prior to that, I consulted as an urban design practitioner, particularly working in the space of collaborative and participatory design. So how do we get community members involved in the city process? How do we make sure that when we make big decisions in the city that folks are involved in that and not just, the folks who are privileged enough to have the loudest voice? My professional background is that I have a master's in interdisciplinary urban design. And I've been dedicating my career in life to democracy work. I will say, for transparency reasons, I have worked with Prosper Portland before, as well as Metro and Peabody and other government agencies and nonprofits around the state. I say that not to boast or anything, but I just want you to kind of understand the perspective that I'm coming from. So let's talk about this proposed amendment. Let's talk about this strategic swap. So what's being proposed is a strategic swap by two city councilors. They want to actually move money away that's typically given to Prosper Portland through the general fund. The general fund is kind of our tax dollars at work. So when we give taxes to the city, it goes into a general fund, unless it's a TIF district, which we'll talk a little bit. Maybe we'll talk at another time about how Prosper Portland Urban Renewal takes money out of the general fund to be reallocated into kind of urban renewal zones. But for now, let's just say tax dollars goes into the general fund. We elect elected officials to decide what to do with that money. Our form of government, that is our newly formed of government, means our city of council is really focused on policy making and the budget. The budget is super important because the budget is a moral document. It's something that shouldn't be hijacked. It shouldn't be, used as political gains. It's really meant to be for the people. So two city councilors are proposing that instead of giving Prosper Portland the $13 million that I believe the mayor put in their budget, that Prosper Portland pulls from another fund, a fund that they have access to, and a fund that they grew. So congratulations, Prosper Portland, you did a good thing. You created this strategic investment fund. This fund, though, I want to be super clear, is not something that is private. It's public dollars. So it's something that we as the people should have direct oversight over. It's not something that I think Prosper Portland should have, the full range of deciding how that money is being spent without oversight. You're probably wondering, but Joy, we have these community, budget spaces. Those spaces don't have a lot of real power. I would love if I have the capacity to share what I think we should be doing around participatory budgeting and how community members should be involved in the budget, and how even with the best intentions, these committee groups are really lacking power, lacking an opportunity to really shape the budget and shape in a way that they see fit. But I won't get in a tangent today. So these two counselors want Prosper Portland to pull from a budget fund that they have, about $50 million. $50 million is a lot of money, but it's not enough to sustain them for the next 10 years. I think they really have two years and some change that they can spend. They can keep themselves afloat with this money. Luckily, our budget is not something that we are looking 10 years in advance or even past 2 years. This budget is for our upcoming year. So when they say things like we're being defunded and we won't be able to be in the budget again in the future, that's like not true. That is like straight up misinformation. What happens is that when we do the budget process again, they usually start from the current budget. And because they won't be in the current budget, they will have to be added to it, which is not as difficult as a process as they're making it sound. In particular, I would say the Prosper Portland, unlike other bureaus, is listed in our charter system. So like it's really difficult to get rid of Prosper Portland. I think too difficult, but it's not up to me. It's difficult to get rid of them. You have to do a charter change, a ballot measure, multiple community voters would have to weigh in on whether or not we want to defund Prosper Portland and get rid of them. It's not something that two counselors can do without the support of literally all the voters in the city of Portland, the majority voters. So to use that language is like very weird to me. I don't quite understand why they're trying to co-opt defund language. It's giving me like very conservative Portland Police Association, where they want to say like, oh, we're being defunded, when in reality that's like not true. A lot of misinformation rhetoric that I'm hearing that is really concerning at best. At worst, I think it's really dangerous and manipulative. So yeah, what's happening in the moment is two folks proposed they posed something. They put an idea out there. What happens in this moment is that, nearly all city bureaus are taking steep cuts in public services. So things that like we rely on, our parks, our water infrastructure, our housing. I think about a lot of the small business owners who can't afford to live in Portland. So it's more than just, when we think of economic development, most people are thinking about it in a vacuum. And part of the city council's job is actually to look at the city as a whole and make tough decisions based off of the full picture, not just, what they can see out of their window, so to speak. So Prosper Portland has this money. They get really mad if you call it a slush fund. I'm not going to call it a slush fund in this moment, but they have this fund, money that they should use to cover the year ahead. Everyone is facing massive budget shortfalls, and Prosper Portland will need to change the framework of this fund to be able to comply if the city of council votes that they need to do this. And the board is having a tantrum about it. They're treating this like a punishment instead of a reprioritization. They're making it seem like they're being defunded for future years, when in reality this is a 1-year ask. And it's up to them, next year to advocate for themselves, to talk about the things that they need. But no one, I think, is ignorant of thinking that Prosper Portland can sustain itself indefinitely on this fund. But what we do need them is to actually, be a part of the solution. Instead of being a part of the solution, they have this unelected board, this Prosper Portland board, and they're throwing a tantrum. They're having a temper tantrum in this moment. Folks are going to say, this is the most diverse board we've ever had. Oh, like, that's congratulations. The bar was really, really low. You have, different folks, but we all know, skin folk and kin folk, that doesn't necessarily mean that they represent what people want. And I think that is a shift from moving beyond just saying checkbox, we have people of color, to asking, are they the right people to be there? And from my perspective, unless this board is elected, I don't think they're the right people to be there. So instead of being a part of the solution, they are threatening to cut programs and jobs, even though they have the money to cover their budget. They're using BIPOC businesses as pawns to manipulate the narrative. So I understand they don't have the control of what businesses say as they do their advocacy, but they can correct them. So when they are in the chats being like, thank you so much for saying what you said, they also can say, hey, just to be clear, we're not getting defunded. It's a program that's getting defunded. It's a program that's not going to have the resources they had in the past. But instead, they love the narrative that is helping them get what they want by saying that Prosper is getting defunded, which is like not the definition of defund. The money that they still have access to is public dollars. So I don't know how you can be defunded if you still have access to public money. So please make that make sense. Would love to hear how that can. I also want to point out that, Prosper Portland, formerly known as the Portland Development Commission, they have a long history of actively destroying the economic capacity of communities of color. They've started making baby steps towards a new approach. But if Prosper Portland's board chooses, and keyword is chooses, to cut small business programs and support for their equitable development over any other line items that they have, like without making the adjustments, like I think that really shows who they are. Then we understand kind of that their promises have changed, that they're not authentic. They claim they care about economic development as it relates to equitable economic development. Yet the moment they don't get their way, they're willing to throw everything away and say, well, can't do it now. I guess we can't be equitable. That is like a weird narrative. Um, I Yeah, again, just because you're a person of color doesn't mean I have to automatically agree with you. And I think it's really checkboxy and really strange that that's the narrative that they're pushing. I think for someone like myself that has worked with Prosper Portland before, that has been a grantee, I've been a small business owner that received startup funds with them. Like, I'm pretty disgusted. Don't weaponize us. Don't weaponize our communities. Don't use us as props. We deserve better. And let's be honest, Prosper Portland is upset that they're being asked to do their fair share. But what this moment calls for us to do is for them to do their fair share. I want to remind you that this board is not elected. They're appointed. They do not speak for all of us. If they can't respond to the proposal that can help lessen the city's challenges, maybe they shouldn't have so much unchecked power. I'm not here for misinformation. I'm not here for manipulation. I'm here to actually make sure that we understand the full picture. I think Portland deserves a city budget that serves the many, not the few. I think that, yeah, it would take a little bit of time for Prosper Portland to change the strategic investment fund, but I think they're pretty smart. They can figure that part out. They're really upset that they just weren't involved in the process. They were mad that, the counselors didn't reach out to them and get their blessing first, which I think is also a really funny example of their unchecked power. But again, this isn't about punishing them. I am, hard on issues and soft on people. I'm not mad at any city employee that works for Prosper Portland, but I do think this is about equity, and it's also about values. And I think our budget, and I know our budget is a moral document, and it's about making sure that all of our public dollars serve the public good, not just private entitlement. So let's keep the conversation going, rooted in facts, not speculation of what we think is going to happen in a budget process 2 years from now or next year. I think that's like really strange. Let's remember who we're centering. Let's move forward with transparency and integrity and accountability. What's the most disappointed in this moment, I think, is just this overblown response to a simple budget amendment. And how it's completely overshadowing like the real urgency that is happening around the city. So while Prosper Portland's board throws a public tantrum over being asked to use a portion of their $50 million reserve, we're ignoring the fact that, the Portland Children's Levy, one of the only resources for like emergency food system funding in our city, is quietly moving with the grant making process that has been very anti-Black. It hasn't been an equitable process, and it's deeply flawed. But like, instead of sounding the alarm about that or other things that are in the budget, we're letting a group of well-resourced business owners dictate the conversation. I think our community deserves better than that. And honestly, I think they should be ashamed of themselves. Of sharing this misinformation. Prosper Portland, again, is not being defunded. If you know us at Imagine Black, you're probably not surprised on the things that we would love to see in this moment. I would love to see continued advancing, policies that democratize our city of Portland's budget process. This includes Prosper Portland's investment funds by shifting the funding power away from the few into the hands of the many, the community. Would love to see and require that all community-led governance of Prosper Portland's investment be beyond just token advisory committees. Like, actually, how do we make sure that elected people that represent us get an opportunity to shape the governance of those investments? I love talking about TIF, but I would love to see anti-displacement protections being codified into law, particularly when I'm thinking about TIF-related community benefits into both local and state law. There's a reason James Baldwin called, urban renewal Negro removal, and I think it's about time we actually put our statements into real action. Let's put this into law. If Prosper Portland really cares about community-led processes, I want to make sure it's legal, not just something that's a good faith effort. I would love to see, enforceable equitable metrics across all Prosper Portland's work, not just the projects that's funded by the general fund. Again, I know they're taking baby steps, but when I hear something like this, they're hijacking those programs and saying they can't do them anymore, when again they can. It's like really wild. And then I want to reevaluate whether Prosper Portland is the most appropriate home for our city's small business services. I personally, I don't know if they are. I would love to see if there's another model out there. We can vision what that could possibly look like. But I do think this is really, I think, brought to my attention whether or not they are the best suited to do small business services. If, they're just so willing to throw it away anytime they're being challenged or they don't get their way. I think another note that I'll say before I hang up, because this is a very long video, but I've been like really, really disgusted by what I'm seeing and hearing about the misuse of the word defund in this moment. Claiming that Prosper Portland is being defunded is like really manipulative. That's not what's happening. The defund movement was born out of a vision to reallocate resources for the collective good, to invest in care, not punishment. To see it being co-opted by a handful of well-resourced business voices in defense of a 50-minute reserve fund is like super manipulative. And it just reminds me of some of the conservative language I see from from the Portland Police Association and other conservative groups, where they try to weaponize, the advocacy of the community and saying it's just woke people doing things. So like, stop saying you're defunding Prosper Portland. That's not true. If we were defunding Prosper Portland, they wouldn't have access to a public good, which is that 50 million strategic investment fund, and they would lose the general fund. So they're not getting rid of that. They still have access to money, public money, not private money. Again, they're just upset that they have oversight now. So to be clear, asking Prosper Portland to tap into a sizable strategic investment fund for 1 year is not defunding. It's a reasonable ask during a budget crisis. So I just would really like them to stop crying wolf. Prosper Portland, you're going to be fine. Our city needs real solutions, not performative outrage. I wish you all the best. Thank you for listening.